It was supposed to be a warm, joyful family reunion, a barbecue to celebrate my father's 60th birthday. The backyard was filled with laughter, sizzling food, and the clinking of glasses. My father had always loved bringing people together. But as I stood near the gate watching the crowd, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong there. The decorations looked cheerful, but the atmosphere around me felt fake. Diane, my stepmother, had planned every detail like it was her own event. Her perfect smile, her perfectly ironed floral dress. And the way she glided through the guests made her look like the star of the show. The moment she saw me, her expression stiffened. "Oh," she said, her voice sugary sweet. "You came." I forced a smile. "Of course. It's Dad's birthday." She hummed, adjusting her pearl necklace. "I wasn't sure you'd bother after last time." That was, Diane, for you, every word wrapped in politeness but dipped in poison. I ignored her and walked toward my father, who was busy flipping burgers near the grill. He looked older, a little slower, but when he saw me, his face lit up like a child's. "There's my girl," he said, hugging me with flour-covered hands. "You made it. Wouldn't miss it," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. The truth was, I almost hadn't come. After what happened the last time I visited, Diane accusing me of being cold and disrespectful for leaving early, I swore I'd never return. But my father had called me the week before, his voice trembling when he said, "Please come. I want the whole family together this year." And like always, I couldn't say no to him. I stayed close to him, trying to focus on the smell of grilled corn and not the tension bubbling around me. My stepbrother Ethan arrived fashionably late as usual. The golden child. Diane's pride and joy. He wore an expensive watch, sunglasses on his head, and the smug smile of someone who never heard no. "Well, look who finally decided to show," he said loudly, waving his beer can. "Our family doctor in the flesh." Aside. "Hi, Ethan. Still working those long shifts at the hospital?" he asked. "Must be exhausting, saving strangers instead of, having a life." A few of his friends chuckled. I gave him a blank look. Yeah, not everyone gets paid to post photos and call it a business. His grin faltered for half a second before he laughed it off. "Oh, come on. Don't be so uptight." Diane swooped in before I could reply. "Ethan, be nice," she said, though her tone was more performative than sincere. "You know how sensitive she is." My stomach tightened. Same routine, different day. I spent most of the afternoon avoiding them, helping my dad set up desserts. Chatting with a few distant relatives who still treated me like family. For a while, it almost felt normal. But that illusion shattered as soon as Diane tapped her glass with a spoon. "Everyone," she called, "can I have your attention for a moment?" The music faded. My father looked confused, but didn't stop her. She smiled as if she were about to announce a wedding engagement. "Since today is such a special day for my husband," she began, "I thought it would be the perfect time to share some wonderful family news." I froze. That tone too calm, too sweet. I'd heard it before, right before she dropped one of her emotional grenades. Ethan stood behind her, grinning like he already knew. After months of talking and planning, Diane continued, "We've decided it's time to think about the future. So as of last week, the deed to this house has officially been transferred to Ethan." The laughter around me turned into a dull roar in my ears. I stared at her, then at my father, who looked like someone had just punched him. "What?" I asked. Diane beamed. "Your father wanted to make things simple. No confusion down the line, Dad," I whispered. He blinked rapidly. I didn't sign anything." "Honey," she said smoothly, patting his arm. "You probably just forgot. The paperwork was in your office last Tuesday. You signed it before dinner, remember?" My father frowned. "No," I turned to her. "You forged his signature, didn't you?" The crowd fell silent. Ethan chuckled. "Wow, that's a pretty serious accusation. Maybe you should take a break from the hospital, Jew. Sound stressed." "It's my mother's house," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Not yours. You had no right." Diane tilted her head. "Your mother's gone, dear, and your father and I built a life here. It's time to let go." My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked between us, lost, unsure which version of reality to believe. "Dad," I said softly, "you know this isn't right." Diane sighed dramatically. "This is exactly why we didn't tell you sooner. You always make things difficult." I felt something inside me snap. "You're unbelievable." "Enough," my father said finally, his voice low. "We'll talk about this later." But later never came. Ethan raised his beer, smiling like he'd won. "To family," he said. The sound of clinking glasses filled the air, but all I could hear was the pounding in my chest. I stood there for another minute staring at them, then quietly set my plate down and walked away from the table. No one stopped me, not even my father. And that hurt most of all. I walked out through the side gate, ignoring the sound of laughter behind me. The air outside was cool, sharp, almost cleansing after the suffocating warmth of the backyard. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that over the years. Every time Diane twisted my father against me. Every time Ethan took credit for something I paid for. Every time I told myself to keep the peace because family is family. I got in my car and drove, not caring where I ended up. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a gas station parking lot off the highway, staring at the steering wheel. My phone buzzed with missed calls, first from my dad, then from Diane, then Ethan. I didn't answer any of them. I just watched the sky turn from orange to deep purple and thought about how easy it was for them to erase me from my own home. That house had been my mother's before she died. She'd picked the paint colors, the garden layout, even the window curtains. Every inch of it had her fingerprints. And now Diane had handed it over to her perfect son like it was a party favor. I thought about the mortgage payments, about the years I'd sent money every month when my dad's business slowed down, the home repairs I covered quietly so he wouldn't stress. I'd never said a word, never asked for thanks. I did it because he was my dad, because I loved him. But I guess love isn't enough when someone else controls the narrative. I finally drove home just after midnight. My apartment felt cold and unfamiliar, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. I tossed my keys on the counter and collapsed on the couch. My phone lit up again. 12 new messages from Diane, 2 from Ethan, 1 from my dad. I opened his, "I'm sorry. Things got out of hand. Let's talk tomorrow." I didn't reply. Tomorrow had a way of never coming with him. The next morning, my doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole. Diane stood there holding a plate covered in foil like this was some kind of peace offering. I almost laughed. I opened the door halfway. "What do you want?" "To talk," she said softly. "May I come in?" "No," she blinked, clearly not expecting that. "All right," she sighed. "I just wanted to clear things up. Last night was emotional. You misunderstood what I meant?" "Oh," I said, crossing my arms. "Which part did I misunderstand? The part where you said you gave my father's house to Ethan, or the part where you forged his signature?" Her lips tightened. "I didn't forge anything. Your father agreed he didn't even know." I cut her off. "You manipulated him? You've always had such a vivid imagination," she said, smiling faintly. "You know, I used to feel sorry for you. Losing your mother so young, growing up angry. But maybe this is just who you are now." I stared at her. "You're unbelievable." "No," she said calmly, "I'm practical. You're emotional. You left your father alone for years, and now you're upset that someone else filled the gap. Ethan's been here every day helping him. You can't compete with that." My laugh came out sharp. "Helping him. He's been draining him dry, and you know it. But of course, you'd protect him. He's your golden ticket. You think you're better than us because you have a degree and a salary," she said. "But you're just like your mother, self-recused and cold. That was the last straw." "Get off my porch," I said. "I'm not going to let you turn this into one of your guilt trips." She hesitated, then sighed dramatically. "You'll regret treating family this way." "No," I said quietly. "I regret not seeing through you sooner." She left without another word. I watched her drive off in her shiny white SUV, probably already rehearsing her version of the story for whoever would listen next. Later that afternoon, I finally called my dad. He sounded tired. "You shouldn't have spoken to her like that," he said. "She's trying, Dad. She stole the house. It's complicated." "No," I said. "It's not." He exhaled a long, shaky breath. "You don't understand. I'm getting older. It just makes sense to make things easier for everyone." "For her and Ethan, you mean, for the family." "I am your family too." Silence. Then, softly, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words. "You're making this harder," like I was the problem. Like I was the one destroying something sacred. But maybe the truth was simpler. Maybe the version of family they believed in had no room for me anymore. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No calls, no messages. Just an empty, steady silence. I threw myself into work, covering extra shifts. Anything to avoid thinking about it. Then, on Thursday morning, my phone buzzed again. Ethan, this time. "Hey, just letting you know, Mom and Dad won't be able to make the payment on the roof repairs this month," his text read. "If you could handle it again, that'd be great." I stared at the message in disbelief. It was like nothing had changed. I typed, "Not my problem anymore," and hit send. 2 minutes later, he called. I let it ring. Then he texted again, "You're seriously going to do this? After everything?" I didn't reply. I opened my banking app instead and canceled the automatic transfers I'd been sending to cover their utilities and mortgage. Years of quiet support gone with a few taps. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once. If they wanted a life without me, they could finally have it completely. A week passed before I heard from my dad again. I thought maybe he'd realized what Diane had done, that maybe he'd want to fix things. But when his name finally flashed on my screen, it wasn't what I expected. "The bank's been calling," he said, his voice tense. "They said the utilities are overdue, and Diane told them you stopped helping." "What happened?" I almost laughed. "You mean what happened after your wife and stepson threw me out of the house that I helped pay for?" "Don't talk like that," he said quickly. "You're making it sound worse than it is. It's exactly as bad as it sounds, Dad." "They depend on you," he said softly, "just for a while longer, until Ethan's business picks up." I froze. Ethan's business. "The auto shop," he said. "He's been putting everything into it." I felt my stomach twist. I'd seen Ethan's shop, a shiny little place downtown that somehow had brand new equipment and flashy signage. So that's where the money went. My money. "Dad," I said carefully, "are you telling me Diane took out money from your account for Ethan's shop?" "It was an investment," he said defensively. "A family decision, without my consent." "You're not part of every decision," he snapped, his tone sharp for the first time. "You left. You chose to live your life away from us, 'cause you let them take over mine." I shouted before I could stop myself. The line went silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "You've changed. Your mother would be disappointed." That sentence hit me like a knife. He knew exactly where to cut. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "No, Dad, Mom would be disappointed in you." I ended the call. After that, I didn't answer any more of his calls. I told myself it was time to stop being the scapegoat, the quiet supporter in the background while everyone else played the victim. But deep down, something in me still hoped for an apology. It never came. Instead, 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a lawyer. Diane's name was at the top. My heart pounded as I read it. She'd filed a claim against the joint savings account my mother had opened years ago before Diane even existed. Apparently, my father had added Diane's name to it last year. She was claiming equitable distribution since she'd contributed to household finances. I sat at my kitchen table, gripping the letter so tightly it crumpled in my hand. That was my mother's money, her savings from years of teaching. The account she opened for my education, my future. I had left it untouched, out of respect. And now Diane wanted it too. That's when something in me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I realized that as long as I played fair, Diane would keep winning. She didn't care about fairness or decency. She cared about control. So I decided to stop playing her game. I spent the next few nights researching property law, tracing transactions, checking public records. It didn't take long to find something interesting. The house the one Diane had given to Ethan hadn't actually transferred ownership yet. The paperwork she filed was incomplete because my father never formally notarized his consent, which meant, technically, the house still belonged to him. And if I could prove that Diane acted under false pretenses, I could stop her. I reached out to an old friend, Maya, who worked at a legal firm. When I told her the story, she didn't even try to hide her outrage. "That's fraud," she said. "If you have proof she forged or coerced his signature, we can file an injunction." "I have text messages," I said, "and bank statements." "Perfect," she said. "But you'll need your dad on your side." "Is that even possible?" I hesitated. I don't know. For the next few days, I debated what to do. My conscience whispered that dragging my own father into a legal mess would destroy whatever was left of our relationship. But another part of Mitha, one that had been humiliated, dismissed, and silenced for years, said enough was enough. Then one morning, Diane made the choice for me. She showed up at my workplace. I was in the break room when she walked in, smiling like she owned the place. "You really shouldn't make this harder," she said, sliding a document across the table. "Sign this and we'll forget everything. It's just a release form." I looked down at it. She wanted me to renounce any future claim to my father's estate. My hands trembled, but I smiled. "You really thought I'd just sign this?" "You've caused enough trouble," she said. "Your father's health is suffering. Ethan's stressed. You should be ashamed." "You don't get to talk about shame," I said quietly. "You've lied to everyone, kept this family together." She snapped. "Your father was falling apart before I came along. You were too busy with your own life to care. You mean before you convinced him to give you control of everything?" "Control?" she said, laughing bitterly. "You think this is about control? It's about survival. You've never had to worry about that." I stared at her. "You know what's funny? You keep pretending you're the victim, but you're just scared. Because the second I stop helping, your little kingdom falls apart." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. Just a flicker of something fearing her eyes. I picked up the papers, tore them in half, and dropped them on the table. "You should go," I said. "Before I do something you'll regret." Her jaw clenched, but she turned and left. My coworkers watched from a distance, whispering. I didn't care. I knew this wasn't over, but now the rules had changed. I wasn't the quiet daughter anymore. I was the one holding the evidence, the one ready to fight back. I called Maya that night. "File the injunction," I said, "and let Diane know that this time I'm not backing down." When I hung up with Maya, I didn't feel scared. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. It wasn't about the money or the house anymore. It was about finally being seen. For too long, Diane had rewritten my story to fit her own version of reality, painting me as the ungrateful daughter, the troublemaker, the outsider. But this time, I'd be the one holding the pen. The following week was chaos. Diane must have realized I wasn't bluffing because she started scrambling. Ethan called me twice, pretending to be the voice of reason. "Look," he said, "this is getting out of hand. Let's just talk it out. Kimine, let's talk it out so you can get what you want." I asked. "You have no idea what you're doing," he snapped. "You're going to ruin Dad's peace. You ruined it the day you took advantage of him." He hung up without another word. Then Diane tried a new approach, guilt. She sent me long texts about how my father couldn't sleep, how the stress was killing him, how no daughter should treat her father this way. I ignored them all. I knew manipulation when I saw it. But then, one evening, my dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked tired, older than I'd ever seen him. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I hesitated, but let him in. He sat on the couch, clasping his hands. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "You're tearing us apart." "Not tearing anything," I said. "I'm just stopping her from taking what isn't hers." "She's my wife," he said. "She's been by my side for 20 years. "And I'm your daughter," I said, my voice breaking. your real family. You've known me my entire life. How can you still not see what she's doing?" "You don't understand," he said weakly. "She's just trying to protect what we've built." I shook my head. "No, Dad, she's protecting herself." I walked to my desk and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. "You should see something." I placed the documents in front of him, bank statements, messages, and copies of the fake deed transfer. His eyes moved slowly across the papers. I could see the color drain from his face. "Where did you get these?" "From the records office," I said. "Everything she's done she did behind your back." He leaned back, rubbing his forehead. "I trusted her." "I know," I whispered. "But she doesn't deserve that trust anymore." He didn't speak for a long time. Then finally he said, "Let me talk to her first." "Dad, please," he said, standing up. "Just give me a chance to make it right." Against my better judgment, I agreed. The next 2 days were unbearable. I didn't know what he would say to her or if he'd cave like he always did. But then Maya called me. "You need to come to the courthouse," she said. Right now, my heart dropped. "What happened?" "Diane filed a motion. She's claiming you coerced your father into signing over control of his finances." "What?" "She submitted fake emails and even a doctored audio clip." For a second, I couldn't breathe. Diane had gone nuclear. By the time I arrived at the courthouse, my father was already there, looking lost. Diane stood beside him, perfectly composed in her pearl necklace, pretending to be the devoted wife. "You don't have to do this," I said to him. "You know, none of this is true." But he wouldn't look at me. That's when I realized she'd gotten to him again. The hearing was brutal. Diane's lawyer spun every story, every interaction to make me look manipulative. They painted me as an unstable woman obsessed with money and revenge. Every time they spoke, Diane would dab at her eyes with a tissue, pretending to cry. It made me sick. But when it was my turn to speak, I didn't hold back. I told the judge everything about the forged signature, the manipulation, the threats, and the emotional blackmail. Then I handed over the evidence. Maya had organized it perfectly, time-stamped texts, account transfers, and the original unsigned deed. The judge flipped through the documents silently for several minutes. Then he looked up at Diane. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said slowly, "this is serious. These documents suggest you acted fraudulently." Diane's face went pale. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "I'm ordering a full investigation into these transactions. Until then, all property and funds under dispute are to be frozen." That was the moment I finally breathed. Diane's mask cracked. She turned to glare at me, her eyes burning with fury. But I didn't look away. I'd spent too many years avoiding that gaze. Not anymore. After the hearing, my father followed me outside. He looked defeated. "You didn't have to humiliate her," he said quietly. I laughed bitterly. "Humiliate her? She humiliated herself." "You've always been so stubborn," he said. "Just like your mother," softened a little. "She'd be proud of me for standing up for myself." He didn't answer. He just nodded and walked away. That was the last time I saw him for months. The investigation dragged on, but in the end, the truth came out. Diane had forged at least 2 signatures and redirected over $70,000 from his pension fund into Ethan's failing business. The house transfer was voided, and both she and Ethan faced charges for fraud and falsifying documents. I thought I'd feel vindicated. But when I got the news, I just sat there quietly, staring at the report. There was no joy in it, just relief. Relief that it was over. Weeks later, I got a call from the hospital. My father had been admitted for heart complications. When I arrived, Diane wasn't there. Ethan wasn't either. Just my father, frail and pale against the white sheets. He looked at me and whispered, "I'm sorry." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. "I should have believed you," he said. I was so blind. I took his hand and held it tight. "It's okay," I said softly. "You don't have to say anything." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, there was peace between us. He passed away 2 days later. The funeral was small. Diane and Ethan didn't show up. They were too busy fighting their charges. As I stood by his grave, I realized something. Revenge hadn't given me happiness. It had given me closure, yes, but not peace. Still, I didn't regret it. Some battles had to be fought, even if they left scars. A month after the funeral, I went back to the house. The garden was overgrown, the windows dusty. I walked through the halls where my mother's laughter once echoed. The piano was still there, covered in a sheet. I pulled it off and sat down. My fingers trembled as I played the first few notes of her favorite song. The sound was soft, broken, but real. I closed my eyes and smiled faintly. For the first time in years, the house felt like home again. I wasn't the unwanted daughter anymore. I was the survivor, the one who refused to stay silent, the one who took back what was stolen. Diane and Ethan could have their lies. I had the truth, and that was enough.